and welcome into Poke the Bear episode 48, the Matt Grzelcyk episode. I'm Evan Marinofski alongside Conor Ryan of Boston Sports Journal. Connor, how we doing?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Just got my eyes dilated, so I can barely see. Can't even see the screen in front of me, but it doesn't matter. We're pushing through. We all I need to be able to do is talk and kind of see when your lips stop talking on Zoom, and then I'm able to do my thing. But yeah, it's funny. I've never driven home after having my eyes dilated before, and I was like, I said to the people there, I was like, I'm driving home. They're like, oh, everybody drives home after they get their eyes dilated, and I'm like, really?
So,
like I can barely see.
So you were the guy whipping down like Route 9, just side swiping everyone.
Oh yeah, my car. It's like, did you see that guy in Boston on the dirt bike or whatever it was?
Yes,
he was
on Boylston. Yeah,
on Boylston. He just mucked the car next to him. That could have been that was me going down the Mass Pike. Just and in Hondas, I know you have a Honda too. The wheel starts to jiggle a little bit when you're going out of the lane. So I just kept having the. I'm like, geez. But no, it actually wasn't that bad. I was fine. I was safe. I made it back in one piece. I didn't hit anybody. We're good. We're doing well.
That you could tell, but regardless.
Yeah, I couldn't see. I mean, maybe I did, and I just couldn't see him. Anyways, one thing I do want to address before we get into it is I obviously announced the news about me going to Turner Sports for NCAA.com. I just announced it on Wednesday. That does not mean I'm not going to be doing Bruins podcasts. I will still be doing the podcasts. I will still be tweeting about the Bruins. I just won't be covering them as in depth as maybe I was before. And I won't be there every day or doing stuff. I will still be involved in the Bruins world. I will not be leaving for good. This is not forever. I'll still be around pretty much. So don't be like, oh, damn,
Bruins fans can have a sigh of relief now, knowing that you're still in the fold. But a well-deserved gig for you, Evan. You do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Connor. Wouldn't be here without you and the listeners as well. You guys have helped me out, but Connor, especially you have as well. And I've told you that countless times. Okay, so Bruins stuff. Sweeney and Neely went on Tuesday. That is it for exit interviews. Exit interviews are done. We will not talk to the players or the team or the management or coaching staff for a long time now. But one thing that was a main takeaway of Tuesday was a retool is likely to be what happens. This doesn't seem like it's going to be a rebuild. The one thing, though, that was interesting was the thing Neely said about, well, if we can't get Hall and Krejci back and we can't re-sign those guys, then we're going to have to think about other stuff. But the main thing was Marchand and Bergeron want to run this back. Retool is likely. Connor, your thoughts?
Yeah, not really surprising when you look at kind of just the unenviable spot they're in. Granted, it's mostly the Bruins' own doing as to why they're in this spot, right? Where it's, lack of drafting and what have you, which I think we're going to touch on a little bit later. But it was interesting. Neely at one point said, they have to take I forget what his exact quote was, but like a closer look at the roster and kind of see where they're at, which I think for some people is like, all right, well, are they thinking of blowing it all up? But also I think last season too, after they lost to Tampa Bay, Neely said close to the exact same thing. It was I think he said quote, taking a hard look at the roster, which is oh, is that it? And then what do? They signed Craig Smith and tried to go all in for Taylor Hall and all these guys at the deadline. So I imagine as long as I think from their perspective, as long as Bergeron and Marchand and those guys are there, I think they're going to, again, I think we touched on this last week, but they're going to keep on rolling with it until the tires, the tread wears off the tires. I think that's the only option because they're not equipped at all right now to even, get a rebuild off the ground with no set young foundation to kind of turn the keys over to, right? It's not like you're just going to hand Studnicka the 2C next year. Maybe he just rolls with it, but it's not the ideal situation you've got, right? So so what they said, in terms of the points of it where it's a retooling over rebuild, not really surprising because I think that's kind of the only real option they have at this point, right? You've at least got a foundation. You've got a group of players that are signed to affordable contracts. If you re-up and let's say you get Krejci back and maybe Rask, who knows what happens there, but and even Taylor Hall. If you get those guys like below their market value, then you've got cap space to use. And ideally, it's the biggest thing after that is using it correctly, right? Allocating those resources to the right areas of the roster that needs it. But from the Bruins perspective, yeah, if let's say this is 2 years down the road and, Bergeron's 38 and stuff like that, then you have to take the hard look and be like, all right, well, the chickens have come home to roost in terms of what we have to deal with. But at this point where you still have Bergeron playing at a high level, even at his age, you still have these pieces in place. The only option I think they really have is to retool and address kind of those areas of the roster that need to be fixed.
Yeah, the other thing about Krejci coming back is we were kind of wondering if the reason Krejci was so odd in his exit interview was that they had told him he wasn't coming back. From the sounds of it, it sounds like the ball's in his court. It isn't really like I think they want him back. I mean, just giving off these comments yesterday from Sweeney, I do believe David does want to continue to play. He's made it pretty clear that if he'd like to continue his career, this is the place that want to do it. Sounds like it's in Krejci's court with that stuff. Hall definitely wants to come back. And I think retooling is also the right move because what else do you do? Do you want to rebuild? Like you don't have the prospect pool to do it with. And it's a boring thing to rebuild, especially with fans coming back. Fans start to come back in the building. It's like, oh, have fun watching this crap bag team that's going to be with the Devils and the Senators every year at the bottom of the league. So yeah, I think retooling is the only thing the Bruins could really do here. And again, the free agent market's not that great. So again, like some of the best free agents you have, like Hall, Krejci, Rask, that's about as good as you're going to get in free agency, and you have them all. And again, unless you can shake things up in a trade, which we'll get to later with one particular position, there's no real reason not to retool. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, this core can't win it. It's like, well, what else are you going to do? Like, what is the other option then? Do you want to watch a rebuild? Is that really what you want to watch? Especially with Bergeron and Marchand still playing good hockey. I like Bergeron, obviously a little much older, but still playing well. Like, again, you still have enough there to do it. One topic that was brought up to start Cam Neely's call on Tuesday was one that many Bruins fans, they enjoy so much. They enjoy hearing about it. They enjoy the talk of it, the reminiscing, the nostalgia that it brings.
Eichel trade rumors?
Eichel trade rumors which are, by the way, actually like coming to fruition. There's like, didn't Pierre LeBrun say that Eichel could be traded before the playoffs end? Like,
yes,
this sounds like it's going to happen soon.
We have to get started, Evan. It's coming quicker than we expected.
We have to get going on this. Because the Bruins are going to be one of the teams that are rumored to be very in on him. Anyways, I was talking about the 2015 draft.
Oh yeah.
Classic times, the 2015 draft. So Cam Neely said, I've looked back at that a lot. Obviously, the timing of when we hired Don and when the draft took place, I think it would have been good to have a little more time between the hiring and the draft. He also went on to mention how they expected to group those picks and trade up, presumably to get Noah Hannafin, who they're also rumored to trade for every single offseason. And I imagine this offseason will be no different, given comments that Neely made later in his press conference. But obviously, a lot of fans pissed off that, number one, you had Sweeney in house during all this. So this was not like Sweeney was in on these draft meetings. This wasn't like, he came from outside the organization. He was there the entire time. He was the assistant GM. And number two, you still know those guys in the middle of the first round. Why were you so thrown off that you couldn't trade up? When was Hannafin picked? Was he number 5?
Number 5 or number 4, I want to say. Give me one second.
I think he was 4. You're right. I think it was 4.
He was 5. Nope, you were
you were
right.
So I was right.
It was Strome.
I gotta stand stronger.
Strome, Mana, and then Hannafin at number 5.
Damn. So yes, that again, pick number 5. Again, you have 5, 13, 8. You have 8 picks. Took me a second there with the math. They don't teach. I didn't learn math at UMass. But they had 8 picks to figure out who they wanted to take. And I think they still did, but Neely kind of explained how they were a little thrown off. And it's like, well, again, you should know who you're going to pick. So again, just adding salt to the 2015 draft wound. And again, I mean, we said it like at this point, that's a huge kind of dark mark on the Sweeney administration. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't tell which part of it is worse. The fact that she said he didn't have time to prep for it, which again, even if he's new at the GM job, he's, as you said, he was in the system, and they have multiple guys they turn to, whether that's, director of scouting or other resources that you think they'd have the book out. And again, it's not like I'm focusing in on just like Barzal, which like Barzal could have had a dog shit interview with them, and they're like, this is, in the immediate aftermath of like Sagan and Dougie Hamilton, which that was going to come to an end of like, all right, like we don't want to deal with the guy if they have a bad interview or what have you. Like there's some of it's the team's like a certain feeling you have in your gut about some of these guys, but I mean we've talked about it. It's not like the people talk about Barzal and Connor and Shabbat and those guys. You didn't have to even hit on like all three of those guys, at this point, probably like one of those guys wouldn't even be on the team because of cap problems. But anyway, like you had to hit on at least one more of, I mean, take your pick, Konechny, Besser, Beauvillier. But like Beauvillier, like obviously people talk about like Aho in the second round, which like everyone missed out on, but like even one of those guys in the middle there that like Joel Eriksson Ek, who's like,
I was gonna say even Eriksson Ek. I'm looking at it right now. Even Eriksson Ek, you could have.
Yeah. As like a guy down the middle that they would have. Like that's a guy you would pencil in down the middle as, not as dynamic as a Barzal, but still a really, really good player. So I obviously I don't know if I want to even call it like the excuse, but of Sweeney, like just jumping into the job is tough, but also the plan of like, all right, we're going to trade up for Hannafin. All right, we're not going to do it. What do we do now? It's like, you have to go into it with at least a pretty good understanding. Like if you've played NHL on your Xbox, that you have a crazy trade, it usually end up like not working out, right? Usually, especially if you turn off those filters, unless you turn off the filters, usually the first trades you make are usually like the computer being like, nah, we're not doing that.
Can't do that.
So to have that, kind of crumble, and then either it's like panic moves or like, I think Neely said that they thought a guy in the second round wasn't going to be there, which I assume was Senyshyn, which like you reach there when there's multiple players who, again, as we said, you just needed one more guy. One more guy could have been the difference in 2019, could have been the difference in the next 2 years. Like you just needed a guy who's going to get you another 15 to 20 goals, right? Like that's what you kind of needed with this core. So yeah, it's a tough hit, and it's something that I think obviously a lot of people don't like talking about because it's probably has been exhausted. But unfortunately, when it's a draft as monumental as this is going to be lingering over them for however long, whatever this rebuild is, unless they, with the 20th pick this year, they find the next franchise guy. Like this is going to hover over you of ultimate what could have been in terms of like, this is like fumbling. It's like Darko Milicic in the 03 NBA draft of like one that, where could this team have gone had they, picked one of the many available guys in what could be like an all-time draft.
Yeah, you said it. Like, you didn't even have to have a superstar. You didn't even need to go Barzal, Shabbat, Kyle Connor, or like, Barzal, Aho, who was not a projected first back then. Like, you didn't even have to have the best case scenario. You literally just needed another depth forward, a Konechny, a Besser, Besser would have been a lot higher.
Great,
yeah, like it's incredible to me. And even it's funny, I'm looking at the draft board right now, and who had two of the very successful late round picks? The Lightning. They had Anthony Cirelli in the third round, and then they had Matthew Joseph in the fourth round. And again, is Matthew Joseph incredible? No, but he's a pretty solid. It was a pretty solid depth piece. And Anthony Cirelli is one of their top guys. So, and again,
and they got Eric Chernak in the second round too. He's pretty good defenseman.
Yep. So again, like, a team like the Lightning, you draw that. You typically with drafts, you can draw 5 years later to see where that team is. It's no surprise the Bruins are having trouble getting over the hump because they blew this draft. They blew it. And they admit it. I mean, again, like Neil even said, I think about that a lot, obviously. Well, I mean, yeah, you do when you can't find depth scoring after the first line every single year. And it's like, Konechny would have helped out with that, or Kyle Connor, or obviously Matt Barzal, or you go down the list. And I mean, that's why I think, it is a thing why they continue to try to push Zaboral out there. I mean, Sweeney even mentioned it yesterday about Zaboral's development. Like, oh, he can still develop, and it's like, it's been this long, and we saw what we saw this year. And again, like, can players get better? Yes, but does anybody want to sit here for so long and see what he has? Like, no. So that's why I mean this whole thing, that draft. And what's funny is that first round was stacked. I mean, just even past McDavid and Eichel, Marner, Hanifin, Provorov, Werenski, Rantanen, Zboril now, Barzal. I mean, you can just go down the list of good players in that draft. I mean, even like it's funny, Dylan Strome was the 3rd overall pick, and you think back and like the Coyotes botched that. Like, make the case in a stacked draft like that, you got a guy who was okay, nothing wild, when he could have got Mitch Marner, or and then if Marner was down there, maybe you could get Matthews down there too, reunite them in the desert, the hometown. But so speaking of, so there's one player in the 2015 draft who the Bruins could have used quite a bit. His name's Thomas Chabot, left shot defenseman with the Ottawa Senators. And yesterday, or Tuesday now, Cam Neely mentioned how they are missing, they're looking for that elusive top 4 left shot defenseman, eats minutes, responsible in their own zone. Now, Chabot's not a defensive wizard, but he is solid offensively, and he's solid enough in his own zone. And with the Bruins, you'd expect he'd probably be fine in his own zone. I don't think it'd be a huge deal. But again, it comes down to the left shot, top 4, minute eating defenseman. And there's not really anyone like that in the free agent market. There's not that big fish. I mean, again, there's Merrill, Alexiak, those types of guys, but those are not top pairing. Those are not even really top 4. Those are guys you have in your 5th or 6th slot. What do they need to do to get that top 4 left shot defenseman?
Yeah, I mean, I think you ideally look at this Bruins decor. I think you need at least 2 guys added to the mix. I think you need to get like a free agent signing. So like an Alexiak, who I think would make plenty of sense. Yeah, he's due for a pay bump because he's been averaging, I think, 20 minutes a game with Dallas. But pretty solid puck mover, great guy in his own zone, 6'7", which would excite a lot of Bruins fans, right? He's a guy that makes a ton of sense. Martinez, I think, is going to get paid this offseason based on the postseason he's having, which you're kind of hesitant about that for a guy who's 33 years old. But I think they need to sign at least one of those guys, like even like McCabe out in Buffalo, who's coming off an knee injury, but you look at his metrics, he could be a guy that, like, as a value 3rd pairing guy, could end up being very, very good because he's a pretty physical guy when he played. His highlights, usually a lot of them are him popping guys on the ice. So I think they do need to sign one of a free agent guy to bolster, whether that's the 3rd pairing or maybe a 2nd pairing. But I think you need a legit, as Neely said, like a top 4 guy that can anchor those minutes, is good in his own zone, and he can generate offense. Easier said than done. That's a lot to ask for. It's not like it's ideal. It's like someone being like, well, we could really use like a top 6 center, like a good 2-way guy, because it's at least, 25, 30 goals, that would be great, right? It's like, yeah, everyone would love that. So I think for that could be something you have to achieve on the trade market, which, again, it's easier said than done. There's, they could kick the tires again on Ekholm, who, we'll see what Nashville does with him. You could go back to the well with Oliver Ekman-Larsson, which I don't think is a good idea. Like, you deal with that contract, and also his game slipped again, which people are like, well, maybe in the new system, and now that it's not talking anymore, they'll do better or what have you. It's like, it's a lot of risk, man. If it was a guy who was signed for like a $4 million a year contract, then you hope for it because he's had a good previous track record. With that contract as is, no, not now.
No interest in OEL. And no, I had no interest in OEL. We had no interest in OEL last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Ekholm's the guy, though. Ekholm is the guy. Like, Ekholm is the guy that's the perfect fit. Like, that was why, like, during the deadline and stuff, that was the perfect fit. Big, strong, good in his own zone, good puck mover, good in the O zone, like just a really solid, big 2-way defender, which is what they need. You need bigger defensemen. You need bigger guys. You've said it 1,000 times. You look at these teams in the Final Four, they pretty much all have big, solid 2-way defenders, which the Bruins, again, Grzelcyk is great, and Krug was awesome, but you needed some size, and you still need some size. Mike Riley's fine, but you just need size. Also, the other thing, not just the left side, the right side. The right side depth chart is Charlie McAvoy, Brandon Carlo. We're going to assume Clifton's taken by Seattle. And then who is it? Nobody. You have 2 right shot defensemen. Two. Because Camper, I would assume, will probably be gone as well. So you have 2 right shot defensemen. So now you got to think about that too. Now, again, obviously you can have a guy plan as offside. I don't think that it's not that huge a deal, but still you'd like to have more right shot defenders. Is there anything they can do with that?
Yeah, I mean, that could be whether it's like free agency with like a Savad, which is again is a guy that's probably going to get a nice new contract, whether it's signing another depth piece, whether it's a guy who could, is comfortable moving over to his right side, which I don't think you'd get a free agent. Like you pitch them on that, like, hey, you're going to play on the right side instead. I think I'd rather sign someone where it's more of a carved out spot for them. But yeah, I think you have to go into this offseason with at least two guys that you have to add, and one of them has to be by trade, and it has to be someone that's legit. And they've even kind of, put themselves in a tough spot because I think so much of the narrative now is like getting a big defenseman. And, let's say a guy like Vince Dunn was available, which seems like he is. Good player, had the reputation of being kind of more of an offensive guy, but I think this past year his defensive metrics were like crazy good for a team in St. Louis that also lost a lot of defensive, presence with a guy like Petrangelo. So like Dunn's an appealing guy, but also how are you going to pitch that? Like, I would probably be excited if they got Dunn, but he's also 6 feet and has the kind of the reputation as more of a playmaking guy. And you'd have many fans not be thrilled about a move like that. Right. So it's a tough kind of, not even balancing act, because we know what they need to do. They need to get bigger. They need to get like an Alexiak for sure. But it's not just, I think you signed one guy and slot him in and you're ready to roll with the same group. Like you need to really overhaul that decor, because it's, even if you improve the bottom six and all that, you need to shore up that defense and have it ready for the playoffs, because that's the biggest concern. It's not just the talent level. It's, can they make it through a grind of a postseason?
Yeah, and it's also that first pass. Like also that, just breaking out of your own zone, which was a struggle in this postseason, goes along with that grind. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, you got to get creative in the trade market, because again, if you come back next season with Grzelcyk, McAvoy, Riley, Carlo, you're not better. Like that's the same thing. I mean, I know Grzelcyk will be a year better, and McAvoy and Carlo will hopefully be healthy, and Riley will be under a new deal, but that's not a top four that you want going into the postseason. Now, maybe they say, well, we'll do what we did last year and we'll strengthen at the deadline. Guys like Ekholm's prices are only going to be higher,
right?
And that's the thing. And that's why the offseason is important for these deals. You'd almost want to see, like if Jake DeBrusk had the season he had in 2019-20, it would be nice to see a trade, like a 1-for-1 DeBrusk for a top four left shot defenseman.
Right.
Like then that would work. That would work. But again, DeBrusk does not have that value anymore. So are you going to package him with something else? You can package him with a pick. Are you going to go for a fringe top four guy? I mean, you have enough of those. So that's why they got to get creative with the trade. And I think DeBrusk might be the guy for it, but you need to, again, you have to be prepared to part with a pick as well. Because again, we said this during the deadline, like if they'd done DeBrusk for Ekholm 2 years ago, you probably could have done 1-for-1. Like that would have been no problem.
Probably.
But now, because of his value being at an all-time low, not much you can do there. So that is this episode of Poke the Bear, episode 48. Connor, before we head out, what can people look forward to over at Boston Sports Journal?
Well, we're going to continue to break down, potential decisions with this roster that they have to be made in the coming weeks, months, whether that's, DeBrusk, bottom six, defense. We'll look at potential free agent targets. And we even have something today on our favorite subject in Jack Eichel, and the fact that I will cut to the point. I don't think they're remotely have a shot at it unless something goes drastically wrong with how the Sabres handle this, which can't overlook because it's the Buffalo Sabres.
Could happen.
So we'll have stuff on that over at BSJ. So subscribe over at bostonsportsjournal.com. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at ConnorRyan_93. We
should do a YouTube video titled "Will the Bruins get Jack Eichel?" And it should just be like us saying no. 4-second video, just no, and just upload it. I mean, but it's the Eichel stuff we can get into next week, if he's still available. But yeah, I don't unless you can get him without giving up McAvoy or Pastrnak, which I don't think is going to be a thing. Then I don't think there's a real shot at him. But you will break it all down. The people can look forward to you breaking it down and making logical sense of it all today. But anyways, that is Poke the Bear episode 48. You Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your day.